Good morning. Welcome to our webinar today on Google Ads and Google. My name is Jairo Batista. I'm a consultant with the Florida SBDC at UCF. For those who are new to the SBDC, we are a program geared to help businesses grow and succeed. And we do that in a few ways. First, we provide no-cost consulting. You can meet with any of our consultants as many times as you like, as often as you like, and it'll be all at no cost. Our consultants specialize in a variety of different areas in business, including human resources, finance, accounting, sales, operations, and much, much more. We provide no-cost market research. So we know as business owners, you have to make many decisions, and a lot of times you don't have the data to back up those decisions. So thanks to our connection with the SBDC network and also the University of Central Florida, we have access to several different databases that can help you make the best business decisions for your companies. We also provide special programs for second stage companies. So if your business has been operating for a little over 2 years and is interested in progressing forward and moving forward, we have a variety of different programs. For example, we through our sister program called the PTAC, we can help businesses tap into government contracts. We have an international trade program for businesses who are interested in tapping into foreign markets as well. Just to name a couple. We also provide these webinars and seminars like these. In the next few months, we'll be offering a variety of new webinars. Next week, we're doing a webinar on cash flow management. In a couple of weeks, we'll be doing international trade. So please be on the lookout for our emails and check out our website for more information on our upcoming webinars. Just a couple of quick housekeeping tips before I introduce you to our presenter today. Everyone is muted. However, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the questions tab in your GoToWebinar platform. We'll address the questions at the end of the webinar. Also, later today, we'll email you a webinar survey. Please take the time to fill that out. It'll only take about 2 minutes to complete that. We use that information to help plan our future webinars and seminars going forward. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you today to our presenter, Matt Weber, from the president of Roar Internet Marketing. Matt has an extensive proven background with on and offline marketing strategy and activation. At Roar Internet Marketing, Matt leads the in-house team to leverage direct marketing principles with the latest in web design and digital marketing techniques to create personalized and measurable internet strategies. Roar is a leader in applying unique direct marketing perspectives to web design and internet marketing to achieve measurable value for all integrated strategies. Building on an award-winning TV career, Matt was an early adopter to the digital marketing era. As a certified Google Ads professional and a sought-after international Google-supported national trainer, Matt has taught thousands of individuals and business owners how to effectively use Google Ads and mine website data for increased lead conversion. Roar routinely achieves conversion rates for Google Ads twice as high as the national average. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Weber.
Hey, thanks, Jairo. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday, and welcome to Google Ads 101. It actually is going to break into 102 and a little bit of 103. So just enhancing a little bit of what Jairo said, I've been working in Google Ads for more than a decade, and I've trained hundreds of people and agencies on how to use Google Ads. And in my role with Google, I travel all across the country pre-pandemic to teach people Google Ads and Google Analytics. And of course, since the pandemic, we've been doing very popular webinars like this to help small and medium-sized businesses improve their digital strategy. So here's what we're going to do today, and I'm going to leave this up just for a couple seconds because you may want to take a picture of it or grab it as a screen grab so that you know when you might want to check your email or get a drink based on what the content of the program is. Because I know I've got a wide variety of people on the program today. I no doubt have people that are running a Google Ads account right now and want to get some advanced tips. And I've got people on the webinar today that have just begun thinking about whether Google Ads is appropriate for their business. And I'm sure I've got everything in between. So we're going to cover a wide range of topics, and we're going to start with some foundational elements. So I want to make sure that everybody in the program today has the same starting point as we progress deeply into Google Ads details. And we're going to start that with knowing your search engine results page, a really 30,000 foot view of a SERP, a search engine results page. And the reason this is important for a Google Ads class is because your effectiveness of the Google Ads account is influenced by some of the other things that happen on a Google search engine results page. So you want to know about all those other items. And then we're going to go just a little bit deeper, but super high level, and talk about the two types of Google Ads accounts. Now, I want to alert you, that's a misnomer. That's the wrong word. There really aren't two types of Google Ads accounts. There's only one. So we could say the two types of Google Ads efforts, or the two different ways that you can approach Google Ads within that account. But it's the super high level bifurcation. It's the very first decision you're going to make when you enter into the world of Google Ads. And then once you make that choice, you're going to discover that within Google Ads, there are two completely separate different parts of Google Ads. And we're going to review those to make sure that everybody has context. And then we're going to talk about some key Google Ads terms that you have to know in order to make sense not only of today's program, but of all the Google Ads interfaces and Google Ads support literature as well. And when we get to that point in the program, I'll give you a pro tip. I think you should take a screen grab or a photo of that slide as well. Because when it's all done today, you should be able to discuss each one of those terms in some detail. And so let's consider that as our benchmark for knowing whether or not today's session was productive, whether or not you can articulate what each of those terms are. And if you can, then it's a really strong indicator you're ready to take the next jump into Google Ads. And then we're going to talk about the part that everybody jumps over, the homework, the what you should do before you even consider starting in Google Ads. Now, if you're on the program today and you've already got your account open, I still think that this is going to be a very beneficial section for you, because when people skip this research, this is where most Google Ads accounts get off track, right? They just had the wrong starting point. And when you have the wrong starting point, it's really hard to play catch up. So in this section, we're going to talk about making sure that you have the right starting point. And then we're going to go into detail on one of those two different types of approaches to Google Ads. It's called smart campaigns. And at this point, we should be right around 45 minutes, 40 minutes into the program. So we'll take a short 5-minute break, let you get up, stretch your legs, maybe get something to drink. And then when we come back, we'll talk about what maybe some of you came to today's program for, a deeper look at the expert or manual mode of Google Ads, where you've got all of the controls and all the levers and dials to turn to optimize your Google Ads account. That section alone is going to take right around 15 to 20 minutes. Then we'll talk about optimization. What do you do after your account's up and running? When it's all done and everything's been input, what do you do? And the great part of Google Ads is that it's a continual effort to refine and continually get better and less expensive. So we'll talk about that very important optimization process. And then finally, we'll talk about how to write great ads. And that's going to be valuable whether or not you choose the first part, smart campaigns, or whether you choose the second part, the expert or manual mode, because when all is said and done, we are writing ads, and this is a marketing effort. And sometimes what determines our success, like other marketing media, is that our ad was better than somebody else's ad. And then finally, as Jairo mentioned, we'll close it up with some Q&A and hopefully bring things into a little bit greater detail. So first, let's go all the way back up to the top, and let's talk about what to know on your search engine results page, what to know on your SERP, as it's called in the industry. And the entire ecosystem kind of evolves around one simple act. It's when a user types something into Google, and the nomenclature for that is it's a query, right? And that's important to distinguish that from a keyword, which we'll talk about later on. Now, in some of the Google literature, they call this a search term. And so when Google kind of gives things the same name in a couple different places, I'll try to point that out today. Primarily, they refer to this as a search query, but there is some time in the literature and in the interface that they call this a search term. By any standard, though, it's what the user does, and that's what distinguishes this from a keyword, which we as Google Ads managers bid on. This is completely driven by the users. Now, generally, there's an exception to this a couple times, but immediately underneath that query when the page generates are what we've come to know as the Google ads. These are text ads. And in general, always exceptions, but in general, there's 3 ads at the top of the page and 3 ads at the bottom. In some really popular queries, there's 4 ads at the top and 4 ads at the bottom. And in some rare unicorn sightings, some really popular queries, you might even see 5 ads at the top, but that is just ultra rare. But in general, this is what we're going to spend 75 to 80% of our talk today going through. These text Google ads that typically appear at the top of a Google search engine results page, generally, but not always, immediately below the query. Now, you've often seen these, and these are called shopping campaign ads, and these are run through Google Ads, but there's only a limited number of advertisers that are eligible for these ads. And in general, you're eligible for these ads if you have an e-commerce application. And within that, you have to have a Google merchant account and a product data feed. Because what's happening in real time, Google is reaching into these advertisers' product database, pulling out the photo, pulling out the description, and pulling out the price in real time to display these ads. So if you don't have that product data feed, and if you don't have that Google merchant account, you're not eligible to display these kind of ads. And in some Google search engine results pages, you will see text ads and shopping campaign ads. And in some cases, you'll only see shopping campaign ads. You won't see text ads. And in some cases, you'll see just text ads. It really does depend on the query. Now, we're not going to go into shopping campaign ads in today's program. It's its own specialty, but I want you to be aware of what they are and where they appear. And right below the ads in general, there is something called the local 6-pack, or now called the 3-pack, because there are generally 3 listings in this area below the map. These are a completely different algorithm from Google Ads, and they're generated in an entirely different way, mainly influenced by your Google My Business listing, but not completely influenced by your Google My Business listing. Now, a couple times you've seen an ad show up in this 3-pack, right? So you've seen 3 listings and then you've seen an ad. Where does that ad come from? That's one of the more mysterious parts of Google Ads. It does come from Google Ads. It is called a local ad, but we don't control when it appears. It appears if we have something called a local extension running in our Google Ads account, but we can't turn it on and turn it off. We can create the conditions that make the ad eligible, but we can't determine when that ad runs. And interestingly enough, we also can't track the results of that ad as a different unit than the text ads that appear above it. So that's called a local ad. It appears in the 3-pack, and it, for all intents and purposes, appears when Google thinks it's the right opportunity that assists the searcher in getting to what they want. We don't turn it on or off, we just make the conditions eligible for the ad to run. And then finally, on that search engine results page are the organic listings, and some people call these the natural listings. So right away here, you're kind of getting some really strong context that maybe the luster has fallen off some of the organic listings just a little bit, because now you get a sense of how far they are down on the search engine results page. But a lot of research has shown pretty consistently that there is a synergistic effect between all of these elements that we just discussed. Meaning, if you ran your Google Ads account and you had a click-through rate of, let's just say hypothetically 3%, and then separate and distinct from that, you knew that your organic listing had a click-through rate of 2%. When they appear together on the same search engine results page, either one or the combined both tends to have a combined click-through rate that sometimes goes 3 times or 4 times as high as any one of the elements by themselves. And that's true whether you have an ad and a local listing or whether you have an ad and an organic listing. There's this synergistic effect that seems to communicate to searchers that there's an extra level of legitimacy or credibility that might be coming from that advertiser because it appears in multiple places. So the holy grail is to use as many of those spots as possible. But today, again, we're just going to focus on Google Ads. So that's your search engine results page. That's your context of where these ads appear. Now let's kind of talk about this misnomer, the two different types of Google Ads account, because I want to kind of rephrase again. There is only one Google Ads account, but there's two ways to approach Google Ads within the Google Ads account. And one is a autopilot system, and that's called Smart Campaigns. And then the other is called expert or manual mode. So it's really important as a potential advertiser, you kind of know that there's a line in between those two. And what's changed recently in the last maybe year or so is that most of the default selections drive you, and sometimes unknowingly, to the autopilot mode as opposed to the expert mode. And you can maybe get a sense of why Google does this is because there are millions of latent Google Ads account, meaning an advertiser started a Google Ads account with all great intentions and maybe didn't get the results that they were looking for. The account is still active, but it's not really spending, and their research maybe shows that it's because people didn't prepare themselves by maybe taking a class like this, and they kind of got confused and left the account dormant. So over time, Google has generated more algorithmic based, more automatic activities within Google accounts, more of an autopilot type setting of it. And that's called Smart Campaigns. And it's the default setting. So if you were to start a Google Ads account right after this session from scratch, it's going to lead you into these Smart Campaigns. So let's look at the difference between this autopilot setting and this manual setting of Google Ads. On the autopilot side, you can see that in terms of your bidding on different keywords, kind of done by the algorithm, ad extensions, which are additional copy elements to the ads, they're created by the algorithm. The keyword creation, kind of created by the algorithm. The reporting is very simplified, not very detailed. And where the ads show is determined by the algorithm, right? So the autopilot term is really beneficial here. So, but I want to highlight one really big difference of these two different systems, and that's this one at the bottom, which is the landing page, right? So with a Smart Campaign, you only have one landing page. Your ads only point to a singular place. Let's imagine for just a minute you're a plumber and you do hot water, you do water heater repair, you do leaky sinks, and you do toilet repair. And people search for those differently, and they have different expectations, and they want to land on a page that's about what they're looking for. So if you run a Smart Campaign and you want to advertise all three of those services, you can only land them on one page, which therefore has to talk about all three of those services. Now, to a user in today's world, that's not going to work, because users only care about what they want. They don't care about anything that anybody else wants. So if they need a water heater repair, you know what they want to land on? They want to land on a page that's all about water heater repair. And they don't want to muddle through or scroll through any of the other services that you offer. Now, Smart Campaigns offer a lot of advantages. As you can see, the time involved is much less than the manual campaigns, but I think this is one of the more overt and impactful disadvantages of Smart Campaigns is this single landing page, that you have to have a page that is all things to all people, which in this very specific world of consumer search doesn't work as well as it used to. So how do you make the choice as to whether or not you are going to use a Smart Campaign or go into the manual or expert mode? It's really kind of based on time. And so if you only are saying to yourself, hey, I've got a relatively simple product, it's kind of singular in focus, and I can only afford maybe 2 to 3 hours a month to run my Google Ads account, then you're probably going to lean toward Smart Campaigns. On the other hand, if you've got a more complicated and nuanced offering, you've got multiple services or you've got multiple products, and you feel like you could either devote 8 to 10 hours or you feel comfortable hiring a vendor to do it, then using the manual or expert mode is really going to offer a lot more power and a lot more small, finite, flexible targeting to get down to a really high level of ROI. So time is a consideration. What are you going to advertise as a consideration on choosing what to? And we're going to talk about both coming up so that you know which ones you can choose, but I want to give you that high level analysis. Now within both, there are two parts to Google Ads, and you're going to see them both, whether it's in a smart campaign or whether it's in the expert mode, you're still going to see these parts. Now remember that in smart campaigns, you don't have control over these two parts, whereas in expert mode you do. And the two parts are search, which is what we're going to spend a good portion of our time today talking about. Those text ads on the Google search engine results page, right? That's the biggest part of search. And those are showing to people who are actively looking for what you do. And that's what makes them so valuable. And that's what makes them a foundational element for almost any small and medium-sized business, is that we're getting in front of people who we know have an appetite for what you do. Now, on the search side, we've also can do those shopping campaign ads that we've seen. And then there are something called local service ads, which are also called Google guaranteed ads. And those are priced on a cost per lead. And there's a limited number of advertisers that are eligible to use those. And we're not going to go into detail about those. So primarily, we're going to focus on text ads that appear in search. But there's an entirely different side to Google Ads. And if we can walk through a door and see a completely different world, and that's called the display network. And on the display network, we can, through Google Ads, run ads on hundreds of millions. Yes, I said that number right. Hundreds of millions of websites who have signed up with Google to sell ads on their website. Now, the distinction here, as you can see, is we're not getting in front of people who are actively looking for what you're doing, but we might be reaching the right people at the right time. And the other big distinction beside that behavior element is what type of creative we can run. On the search side, generally, we are limited to just the text ads that we saw a few slides ago. On the display network side, we can run those text ads, which are not affected, by the way, on the display network, but we can also run banner ads. We can run ads that have movement, that are animated. We can run video ads. We can run interactive ads that if you click on them, they do certain things. The level of creative on the display network side is enormous. So that's a little bit of an advantage when you're getting in front of people who are not actively searching for what you do. So the display network, again, is a different type of behavior, right? So we've got people who are searching, we're going to run the text ads, but then on the display network, we've got a bunch of different ad types, but those people are not looking for what you do actively. Now, the websites that will run these ads, that sign up for Google, they go from the very, very big, the New York Times, for example, some of the Orlando media outlets sell some of their inventory through Google, to niche products, popular blogs, etc. Now, for example, this is my daughter's very popular running blog called runtheimpossible.com. And of course, she doesn't have time to sell ads, but she can monetize her blog by signing up for something called Google AdSense. So if you're a website publisher, this thing called the display network is called the Google AdSense when you're looking at it from the website publisher side. When you're looking at that same exact thing from the website advertiser side, you and I, the advertisers, it's called the display network. So through the display network, we can reach hundreds of millions of websites who have signed up through the Google AdSense program to have their ad inventory either completely or partially sold by Google. We can use some same level of targeting on both of those sides, right? So on the search side, our main form of targeting is what are people searching for? What's their appetite? What did they wake up this morning knowing that they needed? On the display side, we don't have that. On the display side, we're looking at who they are. They're women 18 to 34 that live in Orlando, but we can also target based on what they've done previously. For example, they visited your website, or they visited a page on your website, or maybe they visited this list of other websites. We've got some behavioral targeting that we can do on the display network. And of course, for both of them, we can target by age, gender, location, and device. So maybe this is the first epiphany you're having in today's program, that on the search side, we don't need to have our search ads run in front of everybody. We can just run them in front of women of a certain age, men of a certain age, from a certain city, using a certain device on that. So that's the great thing about Google Ads, is that we continue to refine. And today we're really going to learn about hunting with a laser and not hunting with a shotgun. So we can continue to refine and refine to get very specific. This is that slide I'm going to encourage you maybe to take a screen grab of, or take a picture of, because this is going to be our litmus test, maybe for me, as to see how well we did in today's program, to see if we've been able to communicate these key core Google Ads terms and concepts. So let's go over them. At the very top, the one we've just talked about, called a search term. Remember that in some places it's called a search query, and that is what the user puts in. That's really important that you distinguish it. That's all user driven. That's not you advertiser driven. The keyword is the opposite of that. It is what we're going to bid on, and we derive that, we determine that. So maybe it might be helpful to think of Google Ads as a card game where the user plays a card in the form of a search query, and we play another card in the form of a keyword, and we're actually trying to get those to match. We're trying to put those two together, their search term and our keyword, and we'll talk a little bit more about how this is done. Ad position is exactly what it sounds like. It's where did your ad fall on that search engine results page. And that sounds so innocent and not very important, but we do know this about users: they're lazy. So generally, there are exceptions, but ads in the higher position generally tend to get a higher click-through rate than ads in lower positions. And remember that there are ads on the top of the page and there are ads at the bottom of the page, and the ads at the bottom of the page almost rarely, if ever, see a click. So knowing your ad position is key. And some of you who maybe have been around Google Ads for a long time know that they used to report out your actual ad position: 1, 2, 3 at the top, 4, 5, 6 at the bottom. And they no longer do that. And now they report your position as top, bottom, and then absolute top. So we'll see what percentage of our ads ran as the absolute top, what percentage of our ads ran in the top, and what percentage of our ads didn't run in that top section. Still though,
Excuse me, Matt.
Yes.
The terms aren't showing on the screen.
There we go.
All right.
So this is the one you want to take a picture of. And so that ad position, even though it's not numerically expressed, is still relevant to your success in Google Ads. Your impression is when your ad shows. It doesn't mean that somebody clicked on it. It just means that it showed. It doesn't cost anything to have your ad display. It only costs when someone clicks on your ad. A click, exactly what it sounds like. Somebody clicked on your ad. The landing page is the page that you designate where someone goes when they click on the ad. Now, some people, not Google, but some people call this POE, point of entry. Where on the website did they enter the website? So a landing page is that first initial impression where you designated they should go. A conversion, also called a goal in Google Ads interface, is the end action that you've designed your website for people to do. And that could be they fill out a form, they click to call, they download a catalog, maybe you want them to watch a particular video, but what is that end action that you've designed your website to do? That's called a conversion, the end ultimate goal of your website digital strategy. The click-through rate is simply the percentage of impressions that turned into a click. The cost per click is going to vary widely, as we'll see in just a minute, and cost per click is generally the average that you paid per click. The conversion rate is the percentage of clicks that you drove that actually became a conversion. And that is your ultimate indicator of success. You're going to know your conversion rate, and some of the things that you're going to do to optimize your Google Ads account are designed to influence or increase that conversion rate. And then your cost per conversion, you take all the money you spent, divide it by the number of conversions you generated, and that's your cost per conversion. So in many cases, for some of you listening, that's going to be equal to a cost per lead. For some of you listening, if you actually complete the transaction online, that's going to be your cost per sale. Now that number, cost per lead, is really critical in knowing whether or not you're making money through Google Ads. And we're going to visually show how to calculate that in just a second. Your ad rank is the result of a mathematical formula that we're going to show you that assigns a relative value to your participation in any single auction that ultimately determines your ad position. So ad rank, which we'll tell you the formula in just a second, is a formula that determines your relative position that gets translated into ad position. It's a result of a very simple mathematical formula. And maximum cost per click is the amount, the most you're willing to pay, not what you will pay. Maximum cost per click. It's the most you think you could afford to pay for a click and still be profitable, but not what you're ultimately going to pay. And then finally, if you have to circle something in red or highlight it in yellow, circle quality score. Because remember, this whole ad system is based on elevating ads that are relevant to the searcher and depressing ads that are not relevant to the searcher. Many people think that Google Ads is just a straight auction. He who has the most money wins, and it's not the case. And so this quality score is how Google determines how relevant are you to what the searcher is looking for. And if you do have a high quality score, regardless of what you're willing to bid, you have an increased opportunity to appear higher in the search results in those ad positions than if you were advertising something that is less relevant to the searcher. So we spend a good deal of time coming up talking about quality score because it is basically one of the most important fundamental elements of Google Ads. We'll spend just a couple seconds on 5 things you should do before you get into Google Ads. Regardless of whether you're starting with smart campaigns or whether you've decided to go the manual or expert mode, 5 things that you should do before you begin. And I'm a really big believer in, if you don't know the target, the weapon really doesn't matter, right? So key to all this is knowing exactly what you're going after. Because if you don't know exactly what you're going to go after, there's an opportunity to spend an awful lot of money if you aren't really dialed in on what you want to do. So let's go through a couple tools that can help narrow that down. The first one is a tool you probably use all the time and didn't know that it had a name. It's called Google Suggest. So as you begin typing in a query, Google says, hey, these are words that are kind of related to what I think you're about to type. And what's really interesting about this is that as you do this now, notice that not all of the phrases begin with the same combination of letters that you began typing in, as it was the case maybe a year and a half ago, because some of us search for the same thing in different ways. So if today's session is generating for you the thought that you've got to really maybe write down what are the really impactful keywords that we want to start with, then by starting to generate this list, you want to type some of those words into Google Suggest and see what other phrases are related. A similar thing happens at the very bottom of the search engine results page. But now when you get to the bottom of the search engine results page, right at this point, Google knows the entirety of the query that you've typed in. So you get different results than what you saw in that auto suggest bar. And this is extremely valuable. So here again, you can see that not all of the queries begin with the same letters and words that you began to type in. And this is beginning to show an insight as to the varied and different ways that people search. So this is just some early high-level research. What is the language that our users use? May not be the same words that we use as business owners to describe what we do. It's really important that we get tuned in to what our users and our prospects use to find what we offer, because that's far more important than the language that we want to use. Now let's go a little bit more advanced and talk about one more tool, and it's called Google Trends. And you can find it at Google Trends. It's google.com/trends. And I'm going to go to it live right here. I'm going to switch my screen. It's a very simple tool to use, and you should be seeing Google Trends on your screen. And so let's go back to our plumber example at the very beginning part of the program. And the plumber says, you know, I've only got a limited amount of time. I've only got a limited amount of money. I've got all these different services that I do. Which one should I really focus on? So the plumber may come to Google Trends and say, water heater repair, because he does that. He does leaky sink repair. He does new faucets, and he does toilet repair. He does all of those things. So we're going to click enter, and Google Trends is going to come back and show the comparative volume of those phrases over time. And the default is it's the past 12 months, and the default is the geography of the United States. Now I can change this, but even at this level, it's saying, you know, if you did have a limited amount of money and a limited amount of time, maybe the thing to focus on right away is water heater. And because this is not the absolute number of searches, this is the relative number of searches. It is A compared to B compared to C, not the raw empirical value of the number of searches. So it helps you determine priorities. And you can see that toilet repair and water heater repair are the big ones of these four. So I can change this geography here because maybe I just want to make sure that maybe people in Florida behave the same way as the rest of the country. And not quite the same, but still we've got still two dominant things. Now the other thing we can get out of this is we can see if there's any patterns over the year as to when there are certain times of the year when the search volume is higher or lower than any other. And if I, depending on the location that I choose, I might even be able to type in a city name and even come down and get even more granular data. And there it is. So now we can even look by city. So now that you're starting to compile this list of potential phrases, it's going to be key to start prioritizing them. And Google Trends is the way to do that, and that's at google.com/trends. Now, the next tool that I want to share with you is a little bit different. It's called answerthepublic.com. Answerthepublic.com. And what makes this valuable is that it allows us to determine what questions people have about a particular topic. And as businesses, generally, we're trying to reach people who have a problem, who have an issue they're trying to solve. So how do they express that as a question? Because if we understand the question, we can formulate our ad copy and our website copy to deliver the answer, which then more adequately satisfies the user, which then is more likely to develop into a relationship. So let's go back to that water heater repair phrase and type that in. Again, this is answerthepublic.com, and find out what questions do people use related to water repair. And this one takes just a couple seconds to load, but there it is. And you can see, who do I call for water heater repair? Wow, would you have thought of that? Probably not. Who do I call to fix my water heater? Who do I call for water heater repair? And then down here, how water heater repair. Remember that some of these phrases are not perfect grammatical English the way that we might expect them to be. Now, this is a phrase that's good to know because this is something we don't want. How to fix water heater. Somebody DIYer trying to do it themselves. So in Google Ads, we can actually negative out that phrase because we don't want to talk to DIYers. And then over here, I think they meant to type hot, but how water heater repair near me, hot water repeater near me, hot water heater repair, Charlotte, North Carolina, repair cost. And that's a key consideration that you may only think about if you've done this homework. Really, people want to know pricing in almost anything they pursue. And a lot of advertisers treat that as a taboo subject, but you have to deal with price in one way or the other. Because when you do a lot of this beginning research, you see it's foremost on consumers' mind. So if you're advertising a particular service and you never talk about price, and somebody else is advertising that same service and they deal with the issue of price, they're probably going to have an advantage on that. And that's some of the research that you can bear out by doing google.com/trends and also by doing answer the public. Now, let's go one step deeper and into the actual keyword tool in Google Ads. And so you can find that under this wrench setting here. We're going to click on the wrench. I'm in the Google Ads interface and I'm in the expert mode. So I'm going to click on the wrench. Then I'm going to go over here to Keyword Planner. And I have two choices here. So I'm going to click on Search Volume and Forecasts. So now that I know certain phrases, I can type those phrases in and get an estimated cost per click that I'm going to take to the next level of research I'm about to show you. Now, this account that we're in right now belongs to a company that does landscaping items, mulch, rock, etc. They're just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So since I'm in their website and their Google Ads account, I'm going to type in mulch. I'm going to type in bark mulch. There's all kinds of different mulch. And then maybe I want to compare pea gravel. And I want to get some sense of what is the volume and what is the cost of those terms. And this is what Google's going to spit back. There's a couple of really important things to see here. Number one, here's that 12-month look at the volume. So it's going back 12 months from now. So you can see in the winter, people don't do a lot of searching for these elements, not surprising. What's the competition status? So you got a lot of people in the auction in that, worth noting. But let's take a look over here on the right-hand side. Look at the range in cost from 73 cents to $3.20. Why does that vary by that amount? It varies because remember, the system is set up to elevate searchers who are relevant or elevate advertisers who are relevant to what the searcher is looking for, and to suppress advertisers who are not relevant. So if I'm relevant, right, remember, get that high quality score, I'm going to pay less. And look at that difference. Think about the impact that can have on your profitability if you're the guy paying $3.20 versus if you're the advertiser paying 73 cents. But here's in this final step of research that I'm going to show you is why having this homework done beforehand is so important. Because we're going to go to a tool called the PPC Projector, and you'll find that at ppcprojector.com. That's ppcprojector.com. So now I'm going to take that homework that I've done, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to buy, let's just say 200 clicks per month, and that $3.70, yeah, right, I'll say for ballpark purposes, I'm going to pay $4. Remember, I just got that figure from the keyword planner. Now, numbers that you should know. What is that website conversion rate? What is the percentage of people that if they came to your website would take the action that you want them to do? Fill out a form, call. Now, I know from experience that this website happens to be right around 8%. And then a number that you really want to start tracking to make sure that you get the most amount of efficiency out of Google Ads is if you do get a lead, how many of them turn into a sale? And that's your lead to sale conversion rate. And I happen to know, having worked with this advertiser for a while, it's right at about 40%. And another way to state that is 40% of the leads the website generates turn into some form of revenue for the business based on long-term data. So if I've got this forecast, I'm basically asking myself, can I afford to pay $4? Yes, I'm projected to get a 254% return on my investment. Now, why is this really important? What if that same research came back and it said, hey, that click doesn't cost $4, but it costs $14. I don't make any money. But this is what happens with a lot of people with Google Ads is they go into it blindly without doing this homework, and then they don't get the ROI that they're looking for. Because fundamentally, every business has some keywords that they simply cannot afford. They could work, but just mathematically, they can't make money on them. So to know that going into it, now we don't drive into that pothole from the beginning, and we simply don't start with that level of activity, right? So what did we do? We developed a list of keywords by going to Google Suggest, that's at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page. We looked at the relative volume without any pricing information at google.com/trends in order to be able to prioritize that list, kind of whittle it down a little bit. And then we went to answerthepublic.com to see if there were any versions of those phrases around questions, because those are typically people with a pain point that we can typically solve. And then we took those queries and we put them into the keyword planner, and then we got some pricing information. And then we took that pricing information and we went to the PPC projector, ppcprojector.com, and we started building out models. So we haven't done anything with Google Ads yet, and we are going into it knowing that this is what we can win, this is what we can't win. So let's not even try this set of keywords. We're not going to lose the amount of money that a lot of advertisers do by trying to win things that we've now determined are unwinnable. And just by doing this homework, your Google Ads account is automatically significantly more profitable than most Google Ads accounts. So these are the things to do before you actually begin on Google Ads. All right, so we've kind of established our framework here. We've talked about what's on a Google search engine results page. We've talked about things to do before you start. We've talked about some key terms. We've talked about the two different approaches to Google Ads, the two parts to Google Ads. So now we're ready to go even deeper, and let's talk about one of those two different approaches to Google Ads. And that is, again, as we talked about in the beginning, those are called smart campaigns. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. And those are called smart campaigns. Now, another way to describe this is, again, this is the autopilot portion of Google Ads. So here's how simple Google Ads smart campaigns can be. And literally, I've had people set this up during the presentation that I'm giving. So many of you can set this up. If this is your starting point, you can literally have ads running by the time this presentation is over, even if you're starting from ground zero. It does mean, however, you wouldn't do that homework that I just mentioned, which I don't advise, but just fundamentally from how easy this is, I'm just describing it can take somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes to get an ad up and running. Doesn't mean it's the right way to do it, but it can be done. So the very first thing that you're going to do is not going to be the hard part at all. You're going to type in your business name and you're going to type in your business website. Now, the minute you type in your business website there, behind the scenes, Google's going to start crawling the website. It's going to start ascertaining what it thinks your website is about. And that's going to produce some information that you see on some subsequent screens. And then you're going to tell Google what your goal is. Is it to generate calls? Is it to generate visits to your physical location? Or is it going to generate more website visits and potentially website leads or sales? And the minute you make one of these selections, again, behind the scenes, you're starting to trigger a lot of calculations. And so Google's going to start saying, okay, well, based on some of the history of some of the words we've now decoded from your website, we know which ones typically lead to one of those three actions you see on the screen. So again, a lot of behind the scenes crunching is happening just when you made those selections. And then you can pick a geography. You can start with a radius. For those of you who've been around Google Ads for a while, you know that Smart Campaigns only had this radius functionality. Coming up in just a bit, we'll show you how you can get a little bit deeper into that. But what they found is that radius, or radii, I guess I should say the plural form, radii, isn't effective in a lot of geographies because there are physical boundaries, there are mental boundaries that just don't make the circle an effective way to target. And the example I give, even as I travel the country, is here in Central Florida in Seminole County with the St. Johns River separating Seminole County and Volusia County, there are people on the opposite side of the St. Johns River in Volusia County that will not travel to a business in Seminole County that is closer, and instead they'll travel further the other way into Volusia County to go to a business. So if you were a Seminole County business and you did a radius, it's really going to be ineffective because the portion of that circle that extends over the St. Johns River, people aren't going to do that. And so you've got those boundaries in many other cities. In some cases, they're train tracks, rivers, other elements that just seem to divide people. So the circle is not a great technique, but that's okay because you can also assign specific city names, and you can assign specific county names instead of just using the circle, which is not the best technique to use. So once you choose that, you'll see that Google will show you how many people are in that geography there on the right-hand side. And then you're going to choose a category. And again, as soon as you choose it, it's going to kick off a lot of calculations behind the scenes. And it's going to come back and it's going to say, all right, well, based on the selections that you've made so far, what your goal is, your geography, what you've told us your business category is, and what you've told us, what we've decoded from your website, Google's going to suggest for you some keywords to bid on. And what you see on the screen is what happened when someone put in a yoga class. And I think this is a great example because not all yoga studios have the same types of classes. So it generated that list based on its past experience, and then you can simply turn off those suggestions. But of course, you don't see what you don't see. And what I mean by that is if the algorithm doesn't have any historical basis to know that you do a particular thing because it hasn't been done before, the smart campaigns aren't going to be able to detect that. I had a lady when I was giving a class in Massachusetts, and she came to me and she said, well, smart campaigns didn't work for me because they don't have what I sell. And I just said out of curiosity, what do you sell? And she said, well, I sell gluten-free vegan dog food. And I thought, yeah, it's not going to have that for sure. So she put in dog food, and it came back with dog food for adult dogs and dog food for puppies, but it never came up and suggested gluten-free vegan dog food, which I didn't even know was a thing. So you kind of have to know that kind of going into it. Again, this is autopilot. Remember, we're giving up a little bit of a control in exchange for it not taking a lot of time to do. And once you've made all of those selections, you have to write an ad. And this is one place where, fortunately for me as a creative person, technology hasn't been invented yet to write great ads. So you have to write a great ad. And the thing that I would do before you did this step is I would go to Google and I would put in some of those search queries, and I would look at what other advertisers that you might be competing with are saying in their ads. Because you do have to stand out. Your ad is going to be next to, above, or below, or not. And you've got to generate enough interest to be able to get that click in a competitive environment. So what are you going to say that's so unique and so interesting that's going to generate the click? If your ad says exactly the same thing as everybody else's ad, well, then we're just leaving it up to chance. So we still have to be good ad writers. And remember, the last thing we're going to talk about in today's session is some hints on how to be great Google Ads ad writers. That's coming up at the end of the session. So you write your ad, and then once you put in that, you're going to put in that landing page. And here's that key that we talked about in the beginning of the program, just one landing page per campaign. So if you're that plumber and you do hot water, you do water heater repair and leaky toilets and leaky sinks, one page has to satisfy all of those queries. So if you look even further on your screen, and if you're this yoga studio, one page has to satisfy all those different queries that we saw on the previous slide of those different types of classes. Now, when you do all those selections, Google will recommend a daily budget, and it's based on what it knows is the volume for the things that you've selected. You don't have to take it. You can put in your own. You can change it. There's no long-term commitment. You can change it every day. Wouldn't recommend that. But there's no handcuffs to anything here. There's complete and total pliability here. You can change it every day. You can make it go up, go down. But there's some wisdom in what Google is recommending, because you do want to collect data in addition to getting results. You can't optimize without data. So if you spend too little, you don't get enough data, you can't optimize it. So it can be a self-defeating prophecy to underspend in certain cases because you don't get the data that you need to optimize. So that's it. Isn't that simple? That is all you need to do to set up a smart campaign in Google Ads. Now you can see why I say that I very often have people that have an ad up and running by the time that they get through this presentation. It's that easy, it's that fast. But remember, the sacrifice is we give up a lot of control and a lot of ability to optimize it going forward to squeeze out more profitability. So that's a judgment that you have to make. How much time do you want to invest versus knowing that you're giving up a tremendous amount of control that could lead to even more profits? So that's smart campaigns. The other side, right, the non-autopilot version of this, called the expert or manual mode, is what we're going to talk about next. But before we do that, let's take a break. Give yourself a chance to stretch your legs, and I have 10:55, which puts us a tad behind, not too much, a tad, but we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back right at 11 o'clock. All right, stretch, and I'll see you at 11 o'clock. All right, I've got 11 o'clock. How was everybody's email? Crazy? Okay, hope you got a chance to catch up on it a little bit, get something to drink. We are now going to talk about the second approach, let's call it that, approach to Google Ads, called the expert or manual mode. And remember that the default selection for Google Ads, for those of you just starting, is the smart campaigns. In fact, you now have to look for a very tiny sentence when you log in for the first time. It's almost in like 8-point, maybe 6-point type, and it says something like, want to start a campaign without guidance and try expert mode. It's really small. You really have to hunt for it to be able to go in that. So I want to just reaffirm this because many times I give this program and people will write later on and say, I never did see any of the stuff that you showed and when I go into my Google Ads account. And the reason they didn't see it is because they were still in the smart campaign mode. And so everything we're about to talk about is not in the smart campaign mode. And if you don't know to open that door and walk through that other passageway, then you won't see what we're about to talk about. Now, remember, in the beginning of the program, I said number one place that people go wrong in Google Ads, and it's just no question about it, is they don't do the homework. That's undeniably true. But here's the second place where most people go wrong in Google Ads is they just simply have the wrong account structure. So how the account is organized plays a huge role on how effective it's going to be. So you do have a Google Ads account, and in that account, you make some high-level decisions, some of which cannot be changed, some of which can, which is the billing information, the owner of the account, the currency that the account's going to use, and the time zone that the account's going to use. All of that's established at the account level. And then counts are divided into campaigns, and there are certain decisions that are made at the campaign level, and that is a daily budget, location targeting, start dates and end dates, and some of our distribution preferences is about who's going to see the ad. Those are done on the campaign level. So let's think about this for just a minute. As you're thinking about what to assemble in a campaign, when to subdivide them, generally controlling the money is the key determinant as to whether a topic is going to have its own campaign or whether it's going to have all these topics in one campaign. In general, the largest determinant is money. If you want to be able to control the flow of money toward product or service A, independent of product or service B, then it has to be in its own campaign. They have to be in two different campaigns. If you put them in the same campaign, then you can't control the flow of money. That's generally the largest determinant. Other reasons I see people determine whether or not they're going to break things out into individual campaigns, start and end dates. So you might have a Mother's Day promotion coming up, perhaps, and you need that Mother's Day effort to end the day after Mother's Day. Well, separate end date means it's got to be on its own campaign. Here in Central Florida, we have a lot of advertisers targeting Spanish-speaking people, so language is one of those. So I would have a Spanish campaign, and then I would have an English campaign because language targeting happens on the campaign level. All right, now then, campaigns are broken down into what are called ad groups, and my suggestion is to think of ad groups as kind of Tupperware containers, and inside these Tupperware containers are going to be both keywords that we're choosing, right, to the cards that we're playing to match up to those queries, and ads. Right? And that's really the critical distinction here, is that the ads that we put into the same Tupperware container, ad group, as keywords, they all have to match. They all have to work together. If you've put them in the same container, they have to make sense, because any ad in the same ad group as any keyword has to be compatible. It has to make sense together. So most people don't do this right, and in general, they do something that kind of looks like this, right? They've got a campaign called furniture, and they have a ad group, typically called ad group number 1, and then they've taken every keyword they've ever thought of in their life and stuffed it into that ad group, right? You can see there's a huge variety of things, but in order for an ad to make sense to all those different keywords, it has to be overly generic, right? It's got to say best furniture, great selection, made in the USA, free shipping, 5-year warranty. And that's going to be applicable to all of these keywords that you see at the bottom of this slide, but it's not going to be meaningful to the user, and it's also not going to be relevant to the query, so we're not going to get that high quality score. But this is the structure that probably half of the self-managed accounts that I generally take over have. So the first thing that you're going to do is kind of break those out, right? You're going to spin those out and make those ad groups or those Tupperware containers to be more specific. So we're going to take all those words that you saw on that previous slide that relate to leather sectionals and put them in one ad group or one Tupperware container. We're going to do the same thing for all those keywords that pertain to leather love seats, put them in one, and all the things that pertain to leather chairs. So now you can see what we can do is we can write ads that are more applicable to all of those potential keywords. So not only is this far more meaningful to the user, right? Because if I'm looking for a leather love seat, you know what I want? I want leather love seats. I don't want to hear about other furniture. So it gets me to, as a user, a more specific ad and ideally a more specific landing page. This is what Google rewards in this system that elevates results that are relevant to what the user is looking for and suppresses results that aren't relevant to what the user is looking for. So the development of these ad groups is how we create thematic, relevant ad displays to what people are looking for. If we have the right structure, then a lot of things we're about to talk about become easier. If we have the wrong structure, as you saw on the previous slide, then it really dilutes the impact of anything we're about to talk about going on. So the starting point is to make sure you have the correct account structure. Now, the other way that we control what people see and to get that relevance is through what's called match types. We can take those keywords and we can present them to Google in many different ways that determine how Google's going to match them up with those keywords. Now, if we were doing this presentation 6 weeks ago, everything you see on the slide right now is relevant. We would have broad match keywords, broad match modified, phrase matches, exact matches as negative. But a lot of the industry is wrestling with this big change that Google made about 6-8 weeks ago, in which they've sunsetted the use of broad match modified. So for those of you who have an account, you're on the program. If you haven't adjusted your account for this, it's a big deal. You've got to go in and make the changes. They're not recognizing something called a broad match modified anymore. So what does all this mean for those of you that don't have an account or are thinking about starting one? A broad match, that's when you present the keyword to Google without any punctuation on it. So here you can see in this example, it's Caribbean cruise, no punctuation. And that means that Google is going to take the broadest, widest interpretation of those words and match it with the broadest variety of queries that people put into Google. So it could contain the word Caribbean cruise, your ad's going to show. It might not contain exactly the word Caribbean cruise. You can see on the right-hand side column there, it's going to show when people put in jobs on Caribbean cruise, when people type in the phrase Tom Cruise, because that's a semantic derivative, right? So broad match means, hey, Google, show my ad when the searcher puts in anything that's even semantically closely related to this word. Well, as you can see, that's going to put in a lot of weird stuff, right? Now you can narrow that down a little bit by creating what's called a phrase match. The punctuation, the indication to do this is the quotation marks. See how there's quotation marks on the either side of Caribbean cruise. Now in the old days, 6 to 8 weeks ago, that would mean only show my ad when the searcher's query contains these words in these orders. Now, since this big change, now they're reinterpreting this, and it means that the words may not necessarily have to be in that order, and they're taking a little bit of semantic interpretation of these words. So phrase match means, yeah, should contain these words. Might be words in the beginning of it, might be words at the end of it, but should contain these words, but they don't necessarily have to be in this order. So in this case, as a phrase match, the word Tom Cruise is never gonna show. But you can see that it might trigger for Bahama cruise. It might trigger for cruise the Caribbean cheap or cheap Caribbean cruises. Notice that Caribbean cruise and cruise the Caribbean cheap is a different order of words than the phrase match that you designated Caribbean cruise. See how it's a different order? Before this change, that wouldn't have happened. Now it does. So it's kind of leaking through more queries and making it mildly harder to get that relevance that Google says that we desire for us to get that higher quality score. And then there's something called an exact match, which is indicated when you put the brackets around it. So on the left-hand column there, you can see how you put these into your Google Ads account. Either no punctuation, phrase matches with the quotation marks or the brackets exact match. And remember, in the smart campaigns, we didn't have any ability to do this at all. So you're starting to see now the level of control that you have. And it used to be when you said exact match, it meant only show my ad when the query contains these exact words. Now they're going to include variants, plurals, contractions, articles might contain the word or the, and that's not going to throw that off. But now in this new world, they are putting in some little wider variations of exact match. So here you can see on the slide that even though the exact match is Caribbean cruise, your ad might trigger for Caribbean cruise ship, even though in the old days it wouldn't, right? So we're still not letting as much through as a phrase match, and certainly not nearly as much through as a broad match, but still we have to be wary that more things may get through than we actually want. And we can kind of control that a little bit through the use of negative keywords. And in negative keywords, you have to tell Google Ads what you want, and you also got to tell them what you don't want. And putting in negative keywords allows you to start sculpting from the very beginning phrases that you don't want your ad to trigger for, like the word jobs. Many of you are not advertising to get applicants, so you don't want your service that you're advertising and the word jobs to show your ad that either accidentally or intentionally somebody could click on, which then cost you money but brought you no value because that ad wasn't designed to get applicants. I want to give you a real world example of a client I was working with last week who has a PEO, which is, I believe, stands for Professional Employment Organization. This would be the type of company that you would outsource your payroll or your workers' compensation or some benefits administration. You would outsource it to a PEO. So if you went to the online and searched for a PEO, this advertiser was trying to get in front of you, that searcher looking for a PEO, but they were bidding on the word PEO in quotation. See that at the top of the slide? And so what happened when that was there? So you can see this list of phrases that triggered the ad. The name of another PEO company, a competitor, how much does a PEO cost, right? Because PEO is in the middle of that phrase. See how it has words to the left and a word to the right? Can I sue my PEO? Virginia laws, these are actual queries, actual search terms that were triggered with somebody just bidding on the term PEO. But highlighted in yellow here for you, you can see these are the only ones of that giant list that were really meaningful for the advertiser. So more of them were not meaningful than meaningful. So we needed to be more specific in the keywords that we were bidding on to make sure that the match only let through queries that could positively impact our business. And the takeaway here is not only are we wasting money, but broad keywords that are overly broad are going to, in general, contribute to a low click-through rate, right? Because they're not hyper meaningful to a lot of people, and that's going to translate into a low quality score. Now, there's some negative keywords that you're going to put into almost any account, most of you, like free and jobs, employment, and photos. People look for photos and images of anything. How to means it's typically a DIYer, probably not looking to pay somebody to do it. An author, you might have different competitor names in your line of work. Books, people looking for books about the same subject. Coupon codes, maybe the names of cities that you don't serve, you're going to put that in. The phrase laws about, people often search for, regulations about or laws about almost any service that anybody on this webinar is offering. Or pro bono, which is just, of course, the Latin word for free, which shows up in certain medical circles or legal circles. So we've talked about this search term and seeing what triggered our ad. Where do we find that list? And we find that in something called a search query report. And it's really one of the key things to see inside your Google Ads account. So let's go back into Google Ads here. And we're going to go into one of our advertisers' accounts. And right now we're in the overview, the all campaign view. So we're going to stay in this all campaign view. We could choose an individual campaign, but we're going to go to keywords and watch what happens to keywords, right? It breaks out some sub navigation, and we're going to go to search terms. And right here, your hands should probably go in the air and say, Matt, I thought you said that was called a query. Well, it is, but in some places in the interface, Google calls it a search term, and in other places in the interface, Google calls the exact same thing a search query. Welcome to Google naming conventions. So now this list that I'm looking at, these are the actual words that people typed into Google to trigger my ad to display in this time frame up here. And this is called a search query report. And this is kind of the basic bucket of things that we have to analyze, because if our search query report is full of things that don't mean anything to us, we're not making any money. If it's mainly things that mean something to us, that means we've got our organization of our account refined, and our match types refined, and our negative keywords refined, to the fact that our ad is only being shown to the queries that we want it to be shown to. And now we're starting to get that level of efficiency and hopefully that level of relevance that is leading to a higher quality score, which then means we pay the lower end of that range that we looked at in the very beginning of the program. So let's go back and talk a little bit more about this quality score issue. Now remember, this is called the search query report. Just a quick recap on how to get there. You're going to go under keywords, you're going to go under search terms, and remember to always look at your date range that you're looking at to see what kind of data that you're looking at. You can also have this report sent to you. You can download it right here by using this button, and if you click on this button, you can have this report sent to you at any particular interval every week, every month, so you don't have to log into the interface to get that. But it's so important. It's going to be the one thing you look at most often when you're in Google accounts. So how important is this whole idea of quality score? And I think it's so often overlooked because Google Ads is basically a brain versus brawn medium. And most advertisers come in and they simply say, well, I'm just going to outspend, right? And they try to bid more and they bid more and they bid more to try to get to that top position without realizing this behind the scenes workings that the system is set up to suppress results that are less relevant, regardless of how much money you want to spend. And when I talk about relevance, I'm talking about the searcher's query, not talking about the keyword that you want to bid on. So let's say that you want to run Google Ads and you want to take this brawn approach, or this brain approach rather, and try to spend less money rather than just trying to outmuscle everybody. Let's talk about how to make that happen. And let's talk a little bit more about quality score. So let's pretend we've got 3 people in the auction. We'll start off with my friend Blake Shelton here, and he wants to bid $1 on that. And then, of course, coming into that same auction, the mysteriously missing Adam Levine, who comes in, and he, like Blake, wants to bid $1 on that. But then we've got a late entrant of Taylor Swift, who's doing well. It's a good year for her, re-releasing some of her music. She can afford to bid a lot more. But Taylor's never attended my class, something that I take personally. And you can see here, gets a quality score of 3, whereas Blake and Adam are doing everything we've talked about in the class. They're organizing their Google Ads account, getting everything refined, and they have much higher quality scores. So even though Taylor Swift is willing to bid the most amount of money, she's going to end up with that calculation ad rank of a lower number than Blake or Adam, even though she's willing to bid much, much more, right? So you're getting a sense of the impact this quality score has. It's really not about the money. It's about the leverage that having a high quality score creates. So the high quality score acts as a lever to be able to maximize the power of what you're willing to bid. And then it does another neat thing here. This quality score is used to determine your actual amount of money that you're going to pay. Now, each auction has kind of a floor bid on it that is assigned by Google, and that's not really transparent as to how that happens, but there's a minimum bid for the lowest ad rank in the auction, in this case, which would be Taylor. And then to beat that, all Blake has to do is take his quality score, 8, and divide that by Taylor's quality score, which as you can see there, comes up to 88 cents. And then, so you can see that the bigger number, 8 in this case, is helping him get a lower number because the 7 is being divided by a bigger number. And the same thing's happening up here, where to have the higher ad rank, Adam's quality score, the 10, is dividing an 8. So it's going to yield a lower cost per click. So the quality score is beneficial in 2 ways, right? It's a lever that's propelling your bid to get a higher ad rank, and then it's a bigger number that is used to divide the lower ad rank right below you by a bigger number, which is going to result in a lower cost per click. So it works beneficially at each part of these calculations. And that is why it's so important to spend some time thinking about it. But when you think about how most people run their Google Ads account, it's really about the money. They try to solve their problems with the money. And so many people who are running Google Ads have the money and still don't get the results that they're looking for, right? They've got champagne problems, as people say. And I think if you, a lot of people don't know this, but when Taylor Swift wrote the song called Champagne Problems, she was really talking about her experience as a Google Ads manager. A lot of people don't know that. So let's talk about what drives that quality score. The biggest driver of the quality score is click-through rate, right? It's because there's a very large democratic element to all of this, meaning Google looks at it and says, all right, so we've got advertiser A doing this, and we've got advertiser B doing this, and advertiser A gets a big click-through rate, therefore, it must be relevant because the users, the searchers have decided because they've looked at all that stuff and they've clicked on it, right? So the big democratic element that goes into determining quality score. But then also is a line of relevance that we're going to talk about in just a second, the relevance between the query, the keyword, and the ad, and the landing page. And then the landing page itself is a big portion of this whole composite, right? So they look at the landing page and they say, is it relevant? Is it transparent, right? Is it blocked by things like pop-ups that may masquerade a different intent of what the page is, right? So I can't really put up a landing page and then have something pop up and make you believe you're going to go to target.com when you're really not going to target.com. A lot of what Google does in this system is designed to beat bad guys, and we're all good guys, I assume, on the call. But a lot of time and effort and a lot of the things that we deal with are trying to battle bad guys on behalf of that. So Google's got to battle bad guys. And so we've got this click-through rate, which is a giant factor, the keywords past click-through rate, the overall click-through rate of all the uses in your account is less of a factor than it used to be. It's really more specific about that particular keyword. And then this line of relevance that we're going to talk about. So these factors drive this quality score. So how do you get a better quality score? You improve your line of relevance that I'm going to show you in just a second, increase your click-through rate, which you can do by a better position and a better ad, and improving your landing page. If your landing page loads slowly, that's going to ding you a little bit on quality score. And quality score shows up in your account, and it's measured on a scale of 1 to 10, and it's only visible at the keyword level. So if you've never seen it, you're probably looking at the wrong level. And you simply have to change your columns, make sure you're at the keyword level, and change your columns to view quality score. It is not a default view. You have to change your columns to go see it. But once you see the quality score of your keywords, now you can set out on a mission to improve the quality score to get the positive benefit of that leverage that we talked about a few slides ago. So let's put quality score in really simple terms. Let's put quality score in terms of ice cream. And so you can see what kind of ice cream this is. And I want you to imagine for just a minute that you want chocolate chip mint ice cream, right? So think about that. You are focused on finding chocolate chip mint ice cream. So you're going to go to Google and you're going to type in chocolate chip mint ice cream. And so if you're not a good Google Ads manager, the user puts in the term mint chocolate chip ice cream, and you're bidding on the keyword chocolate chip ice cream, right? Because your ad's still going to trigger, right? Because mint chocolate chip has within it the keyword chocolate chip ice cream. So your ad's going to trigger. And maybe your ad says, hey, look at us. We've got all kinds of ice cream. Come to our ice cream store. We've got 57 flavors of ice cream. It's really going to be great. And then you land them on a page that's all about your ice cream shop, which again says, look, we've got 57 flavors, we've got all kinds of ice cream. You can see that this is a fragmented approach to trying to be relevant to the user, right? They're just not all lined up. This whole thing is kind of bouncing around a little bit, and this is not what users want, and this is not what Google wants. So let's do this a little bit differently here. Let's draw this line a little bit differently. And let's say that we're gonna, same phrase, someone goes to Google and types in mint chocolate chip ice cream, but this time we have a keyword that is about mint chocolate chip ice cream, and it's in an ad group that's only about mint chocolate chip ice cream. Therefore, the ad talks about mint chocolate chip ice cream. And where do we land them? We land them on a page that is about mint chocolate chip ice cream. So now we've got this really straight line of relevance that gives the user exactly what they're looking for and allows Google to give us a higher quality score because we're offering exactly what the user is looking for. So I hope you're walking away from this section saying it's all about being specific. People have an expectation now when they use the internet that no matter what weird esoteric thing they're looking for, they think they can find it. And if you offer something that's kind of obliquely close and you think, what the heck, this is good enough, it's not going to work. The expectation that people have that they're going to find exactly what they're looking for continues to grow, and that's evidenced in the length of words in a search query. Right back in the day, search queries used to be 2 or 3 words. Now search queries are 4, 5, 6, 7 words. People looking for something very specific, and as advertisers, you have to deliver that very specific. So that's how you get to that high quality score, which then makes the whole Google Ads experience more profitable for you. So now you've got your Google Ads account set up, and you've got the right structure, and you've got the right match types, and you put in negative keywords. Now what? The interesting thing about Google Ads is that it's not a set it and forget it medium, and although many people treat it like that. So let's say when you get your account set up, what are you going to do? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to implement everything we talked about today. And then you're going to generate the search query report that we talked about. So you look at all of those phrases and you go, you know what? Some of those just don't mean anything to me. So we're going to add negative keywords so that our ad doesn't trigger for those in the future. And they'll be pretty apparent, right? They'll be very visible. And then the other thing that we can do then is we can refine match types. We'll see that our broad match is letting in too many things and our phrase match is letting in too many things. So we start narrowing down to the point that we have primarily exact matches. And then we may find ourselves in a position, let's go back to that slide for a second, to subdivide our ad groups and make our themes even more tight than they were before, even to the point that we have maybe one keyword in an ad group because we think that is specifically what someone wants. So the idea behind these negative keywords and the match types and all this organization is we're just determining who gets through the gate, right? We got a lot of search query volume. Remember, the potential to spend money on Google Ads is pretty high because we all know how many Google searches there are, right? It's just, they continually throw out these giant jaw-dropping numbers of how many searches happen every minute. So there's a giant push, right? Even if you restricted the giant push, giant volume there. So if we're not really careful, this is how accounts spend money and then people get disappointed. So everything we're doing right now is just selectively who's going to get through that gate, because there is a lot of pressure. Our ads will trigger a lot of times if we're not careful. So we're going to selectively determine who gets through that gate. So this idea of managing Google Ads account is really about the ongoing process of phrase match refinement and splitting up our ad groups into smaller and smaller units. And then we're going to see patterns that pertain to devices. We're going to see for some keywords we do better on mobile devices than we do on desktop and vice versa. And so we're going to start optimizing around that. In fact, I have accounts that just run only on mobile devices. I have other accounts that run only on desktops because the money that's spent on mobile devices is a waste. So why do I continue to do it if I can demonstrably show that it's not effective? So we're continually refining, making that laser smaller and smaller. You'll see the same thing for geographies. Not all things are equal. So your business, for whatever reason, has a pattern about geography. You do better or worse in certain areas. Leverage that. Walk away from the weaker areas or figure out why that area is weaker. And then we're going to do ad creative development. The great thing about digital ads is that we don't have to wait for a magazine to be published or a television commercial to be produced. We can be changing our ads on the fly. Again, wouldn't recommend it, but nothing prevents us from fine-tuning our ads and testing ads that we're going to talk about in just a second. And then bid optimization. So I bid this amount of money, which probably translated into this ad position, and I did okay. What happens when I decrease my bid or when I increase my bid? It's all a continual refinement process that is ongoing. So why do some people pay people to manage Google Ads accounts? It's generally not for the setup, although that matters. It's for this ongoing, regular, cyclical refinement and optimization that continues to happen. And we have accounts that we've been running for 10 plus years, and there are still opportunities to refine them even after 10 years. All right, we're getting down toward the bottom, which means we're a tad over time. So we've got maybe just about 4 minutes of content left, and then we'll get you out of here. We're gonna probably go about 4 minutes over. Let's talk about how to write great ads, which is another one of those big three delineations between why certain people are successful in ads and Google ads and why not. We've got Google account structure, we've got whether or not they did the homework, and then this would be the third big variable as to what determines whether account is successful. And so you can see here, your Google ad really is kind of a bar fight, right? It's competing against these other three ads for attention. We want to believe that the user is going to read every one of these ads singularly and word for word and study them and make some really nice deliberative decision. It doesn't work that way. They skim a couple seconds like you do. So what's the big headline? What's the big thing that's going to grab them? So we look at these three ads. The ad in the middle, what's its big promise? Look no further than Drake. Okay, not really sure it's a big promise. First ad, plan starting at $24.99 a month. Okay. Third ad, $50 value. I'm not really sure what that means. Pro pest control, and the fact that I can pay bills online, which seems secondary to me. If I haven't decided you're the right vendor for me, the fact that I can pay online seems like that's a little bit of an interesting argument to lead with at that point. So with this, plus the fact that the stars are showing in that first ad, there's a pretty good chance that that first ad is going to get that click. And look at the third ad on your screen. We are committed to personalized attentive care for commercial and residential customers. Well, first of all, I'm not a commercial customer because I would have used different words. So no reason to put that in the ad. Now you're not being relevant. And the fact that the ad starts off with the we word and not the you word, because what's in it for me, is more important than what's in it for you, the advertiser. It's what's in it for me, the searcher. So you didn't help me solve my problem with that. So we've got a poorly written ad at the very bottom. And so when this company looks at its Google Ads results, it's going to go, man, this medium didn't work for me. Here's the reason. Didn't do a good job on the ads. Now, one of the things that people try to do in the ads, which is a mistake, is to try to sell the service. Don't try to sell the service in the ad. The ad has one job. The ad's job is to get a click. That's it. That's its sole role in life, to get the click. To go to the website, where the website does the heavy lifting of making the sale and being persuasive enough to convince that searcher to interact with you. That's the website's job. That's not the ad's job. The ad's job is simply to get the click. Now let's look at an ad which takes advantage of all of the functionality that's in Google Ads, and look at these promises. So look at this ad. Hormonal acne would be the word that somebody types into Google. So we've matched up hormonal acne treatment. We've matched up with the words that someone's searching for, always big. See before, after photos, the promise. That's what gets them to click to go to the website. Because where are those photos? They're on the website. Guaranteed results. Big, big promise there, right? A pore by pore treatment to extract blockage. See video. Amazing results. So I've got some promises, some value propositions that if someone else is going to have an ad that competes with this, they're going to have to match me promise for promise and value proposition for value proposition. The point here is that this is a very competitive environment, and we simply have to have a better ad than the other advertisers that are going to be in this auction, or we're not going to win. So how to write some great ads? Remember to sell your website, not your product or service. The medium's too small to really try to sell your product or service. You've got this glorious, expansive medium in a website to sell your product or service. Use the website to sell the service, not the ad. And fundamentally, you have to answer the question, why you and not another business? Remember, those ads are side by side your ads, and do the search beforehand. Before you write your ad, do the search. What are other advertisers saying? How are you going to stand out? Always make sure you include the keywords. You're trying to get that eye-to-eye recognition. What the Google searcher wants matches up with what you're delivering, trying to create that line of relevance, not only materially with the words, but also mentally with the searcher itself. You're trying to connect with the searcher by being where they want you to be. And then the great thing about digital ads is that you always get to test and revise. Think about your ad writing as like one big pigtail sports bracket, right? You're going to have two ads. You're going to let them compete for a while. One of them is going to do better than the other. You pause the ad that underperformed and you bring in another contender. And then you let those two battle it out for time, and then someone's going to underperform. You pause that underperformer and you bring in another contender. And by doing that over and over again, you continually get to stronger, better ads. So that's how to write great ads. Now, before we wrap up and see if anybody wants to hang around for some Q&A, just some additional resources that if you want to take today's program a little bit further, you can go to Skillshop, Google's program with all kinds of great programming. You'll find that at skillshop.withgoogle.com. There is a Google Ads YouTube channel. Look for the official one. A lot of people masquerade as a Google Ads YouTube channel, but you'll be able to tell the one that's from Google Ads. They put out great content. You can follow Google Ads on Twitter. They put out not only some link to some great new support pages, and they link to, of course, some great videos on YouTube, but it's a great way to stay on top of big changes and small changes in the interface. LinkedIn.com, some of you formerly knew that as lynda.com, has some great classes on Google Ads. And you can also go to coachforppc.com if you're looking for not somebody to manage your ads, but someone just to provide some guidance and some strategy as you need it on your pace, on your schedule. You can find that at coachforppc.com. So here's what we did today. Before we get to the Q&A, we talked about the SERP, making sure you know all the elements on the SERP because they influence your Google Ad results. We've talked about the two, let's call it approaches to Google Ads. Let's not use Google Ads accounts. Smart campaigns and manual or expert mode. You got to leave today knowing those two different things. The two different parts, search and display network. We went through those terms. Take your screen grab or your photo, see if you now understand all those terms. We talked about the 5 things to do before you start Google Ads. And then we went into smart campaigns and we showed how simple they are to set up, really under 10 minutes to get one going. We talked about the expert manual mode and we dove into the organization of an account. We dove into match types and we dove into the optimization cycle. And we talked about how to write great ads, which is one of the 3 big ways that people do better or worse when it comes to Google Ads. So even though we're just a little bit over time, if you do want to hang around for, with Jairo's permission, we can maybe do 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A. Is that okay with you, Jairo?
Oh yeah, definitely okay. Actually, we have it till noon, so we have plenty of time.
Oh man, I do that all the time with these programs. So let me rephrase that and say, we ended exactly on time, leaving a fully adequate amount of time for questions and answers.
There you go. All right. I actually have a couple of questions so far. First question, how do you create a landing page?
Sure. Landing page ideally should be on your website, ideally, because if you're going to use Google Ads to drive traffic, driving traffic to your domain, your main website, has a benefit beyond Google Ads. So if you can create your landing page, create it within the structure of your website with whatever platform that is built on, whether that's WordPress, etc. Now, separate from that, there are many programs that are designed to just build landing pages. They're not connected to your main website. So Unbounce is a very popular one. So if you Google the phrase programs to create landing pages, they are kind of drop and drag programs that allow you to get a single page up very quickly for Google Ads efforts. But keep in mind though that many queries, people need to see more than just the service, right? So a landing page by itself is often called a suicide page or a do or die page, meaning it's one page and you hope that the Google Ads visitor has everything they need and can make a decision and takes an action within that page. It's called a suicide page, or some people call it a do or die page. But if you're advertising a service, a medical practice, an attorney, an accountant, a plumber, people tend to want to look and find out a little bit more about the company other than just the fact that you want to do the service. So they're interested in a meet the team page or an about us page. They're looking for a total context of the company. So in some cases, just a landing page about a very specific service may not be sufficient because the searcher is looking for a context about that company. So I hope I answered that question.
Awesome. All right, next question. would you say that it is bad to allow clicks for searches that are intended for a competitor's company name? My thought was that if they are looking for a competitor and find us, that's a good thing. Is that correct or bad logic?
Yeah, what an awesome question. It works both ways. I have seen it be a complete failure, and I have seen it be massively successful. And the reason it's massively successful is that when you bid on the competitor's name, it costs so much less money than the actual phrase itself. So let's take a roof cleaning, for example, because we're pretty deep into that space. If I want to bid on the phrase roof cleaning Orlando, it's going to be $6 or $7. If I want to bid on the name of somebody who I know is in the roof cleaning business, it's going to be like 75 cents or $1, right? But not as many people are going to convert because those people have an established intent. They're already looking for this. If you are going to bid on competitors' names, here's where I've seen it be most effective. When you've created a page that compares you to the other competitors, because you know that they have this intent, right? This predisposition, this path that they're already on. They're looking for company A. If you just land them on a page, it's all about you and nothing about company A, the chances of it working are slim. But if you land them on a page that mentions company A and company B and company C and company D and you, and has that basic, green check mark, we do this, and the red X, they do that, that's where I've seen it be most successful. It's most successful when you recognize the fact that those people are already traveling in a particular direction, and you kind of have to go with them just a little bit. If you try to change them 180 degrees and just say, I know you're looking for that, but I'm going to give you this, it typically does not work.
Any more questions? Okay, here's another question. This is the same person that asked that last question. With respect to my previous question on competitors, our ads trigger for competitors, but we're not bidding for our competitor's name. Is that okay?
I wouldn't think so. So that means that, in the case of roof cleaning, they're bidding on the phrase match of roof cleaning, but someone searches Bob Jones roof cleaning, right? So that phrase match is inside the query, so the ad's going to trigger. To prevent that, we have to negative keyword out the word Bob Jones. So you're going to go to your search query report, look at all those search queries, you're going to see the competitors' names, and then you're going to negative keyword them out so that you don't trigger, because it sounds like you're bidding on a term that is broad enough that it includes the competitors' names. Your other option is to create an ad group and create keywords that are all the competitor names, and by design have your ads trigger for those. But again, that generally means you want to match up with a landing page. So it's not a good idea to let it happen by accident. If you do it by design, but not by accident.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, going once, twice. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions.
Not sure how to take that.
Yeah, well, got like several people have said fantastic session, great job. You have a lot of fans here.
Good to know.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for attending our webinar today on Google Ads. Thank you again, Matt, for presenting this. Like I said, you got a lot of fans now. We look forward to seeing each of you again in a future webinar. Again, like I said, we have a cash flow management webinar coming up next week, and an international trade webinar in 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from now. If you have any questions regarding this presentation, please feel free to shoot us an email. You can contact Matt as well. We'd be glad to help you in any way. Thank you all for coming, and have a great day.